Hey guys, it's Dom here, and today we have another custom cards video, and I thought let's look at something weird. Let's look at something that hasn't been done yet and slightly change something already in the game, and we'll work on self-destructive supports. So basically what I mean by this are cards that go in the support lane, but after a certain amount of effects have gone off, they just kind of implode and you get the space freed up again. And with this, I came up with a new kind of card almost, so they work a bit like shouts, but for supports. So what I mean by that is that these cards will have multiple levels that they go through, but instead of it being when you play previous versions of this card, it will level up. It will be once something happens, which is specified on each card, then it will advance to the next chapter on the next turn. So basically, you can only use its effect once per turn, pretty much, but the rewards come in straight like that. Okay, so all of our cards are based off Elder Scrolls Online chapters or DLCs, and the first one is based off the Dark Brotherhood, and this is called Contracts of the Gold Coast. It's a 6-cost support, which has 5 chapters like all the others, and whenever you play a card with Slay and it uses its Slay ability, then this will advance 1 chapter. Cards like Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, stuff like that, that doesn't mean it will advance through multiple chapters at once. It will just be 1 chapter on your turn. So first of all, the reward is that it will equip the Blade of Woe to a friendly creature, which, as you can see down here, is something which will give one of your units +1 power. This card itself is immune to silence, not what it's equipped to. So the card it's equipped to, if it's silenced, will lose all of its effects and buffs except that +1 to attack. Next, if this card is destroyed or sent to the graveyard, it will be put back in your hand instead. So it will basically be like an iron dagger, which your opponent can't get rid of, but it costs 3 for you to use. Okay, and then next of all, when you get to Chapter 2, it will summon a target in every single lane. So that's your field lane, your opponent's field lane, etc, etc. And then Chapter 3, you draw 2 cards of Slay from your deck at random. That's just a nice bit of draw power and helps you kind of get your way through these contracts. Number 4, you summon a random card with Slay in each lane. So this is just about kind of showing a few more cards on your field, scaring your opponent. And then finally, Chapter 5, you enhance the Blade of Woe. So it loses the ability of returning to your hand, but it becomes a +3, +2 with lethal and drain, and the wielder is immune to silence for a bit of protection. With these cards, obviously, they're really good, but anything like Edict of Azura or cards which destroy supports will easily cut them off. Okay, because I've already done stuff with Clockwork City, I wanted to see what other Dwarven neutral cards I could kind of make something with, and in the end I went with the Exhibition to Frostvault, which is from Wrathstone. Okay, so this is a 5-cost card, and the first chapter will be set off once you summon 3 neutral creatures. So basically you'll keep a counter, and every time 3 or more hit the field, or it'll reset after 3 every single time. And if, say, you summon 6 in 1 turn, it will meet the requirement of the next chapter, but it will hold back using that second chapter until your opponent's turn, because it can only use 1 chapter per turn. Okay, so the first reward is that all your 0 and 1 cost Dwemer cards in your hand and deck, and in graveyard and field, so if they do get unsummoned, will gain Assemble +1 power or +1 health. And because only these ones have Assemble, it doesn't mean every single Dwemer card that you have is going to get that bonus as well. It's that those very low cost cards are going to work like factotums as well. And it's just a bit of nice synergy almost, and kind of allows you to work other cards together. Cards like Halls of the Dwemer, which actually spawn in more Dwarven spiders, they won't get the Assemble bonus. That's something I need to note as well. Okay, Chapter 2, you draw a Gearwork Spider and a Dwarven Sphere, but you increase their costs by 2. That's just so it slows down the effects of these chapters and doesn't cause you just a full-on swarm like crazy. But obviously giving you a Gearwork Spider, if you've already lost a few, that will allow you to be able to swarm, so it's got its pluses and its minuses. Number 3, all neutral cards in your deck which cost more than 7 have their cost reduced by 1. This is just something that I think is just really nice for pure neutral decks and will help them kind of get through what's in their deck a bit faster. And obviously, as it also helps through their hand, it means if they've got one of their key cards, it just gets them a bit closer to it. Okay, Chapter 4, its reward will be that you get to choose one of your lanes, and either field or shadow, you choose it, and then all the cards in that just gain all the benefits of previous assembles played already. If there's like a factotum or something which has the assembles already, it won't get it again. And finally, Chapter 5, you draw a Dwarven Colossus, but it will only be an 8 cost, so it'll be really easy to summon. So just something quite nice, I think, for neutral, and definitely fits with Dwemer and factotums. Right, so next we have Raid on the Lair of Dragons, which is based off Scalebreaker. This was a bit of a weird one because I wanted to make a card for dragons, but I also wanted it to be a triple attribute card, and I wasn't too sure which ones to make it, so I thought I'll go with House Lalu. Obviously, if you did or beg to differ or think it should be something else, let me know what you thought in the comments. And I want it to be something that builds up to a big boss card, which has its own little mechanic as well, which I'll talk through later. Okay, so every time you play 2 or more different types of cards, this will go off. So when I say different types, I mean creature and action, or item and support, not like Redguard and Argonian. That doesn't count. Okay, so the first one, the reward would be it summons a tiny dragon in each lane. This is just to kind of get that sort of, when you're having a boss battle, when they summon like mini underlings to kind of throw at you. It's that kind of initial threat almost. Quite easy to deal with, but still a bit of a pain if you just let it live. Next of all, the reward is that the next dragon you summon will gain a random keyword. This is just something quite nice, something very simple, which will make you think, oh yay, now I've got Drain on one of my boys, and he's going to heal me up. It's just something simple, and I didn't really want to overthink it for the first few effects. Okay, Chapter 3. This is quite a bit of heavy draw power here. So you get to draw 2 random common or rare dragons. They're not from your deck, it's just grabbed from the Aether, I guess. I don't know. And then Chapter 4, the reward is you gain 2 health for each dragon in your graveyard. This is just to do with like the number of dead dragons and stuff, and really going into that effect that it's meant to be for a pure dragon deck in House Lalu, which is a bit weird. You don't see that many of them, but you could reinforce it. And finally, Chapter 5 will allow you to summon Marsalok, the big boss of Scalebreaker, who has the ability at the end of your turn infect 2 random enemy creatures, and whenever he attacks, basically he just damages all infected creatures if he hits one of them. And infected creatures will lose -1/-1. They can't be infected multiple times, and if they're attacked by him, he will also evade their wards if they have one. Now, I think this is quite powerful, but because you've got to get through 5 turns of supports, and your opponent can take it down at any time, and you've got to be playing 2 of different cards, I thought it kind of does balance out. Okay, next we have the Horns of the Reach, which is a Crusader card, which starts at 4 cost and has a bit of a different kind of set-off ability. And that's for each enemy destroyed rune, it will advance a chapter. So basically, if all your enemies' runes are destroyed as soon as you play this card, Chapter 1 will instantly go off on your opponent's turn, Chapter 2 will go off on your next turn, Chapter 3, etc, etc. So anyway, let's make our way through this. The first reward will just summon a random Reachman, something very basic, very simple, mainly just because this is a 4-cost card, and usually at that time, you might not have even broken a single rune of your opponent's. Next is the fact that you just get to draw a card. Again, the first few effects on this were very simple, just because it's a low-cost ability, and it's something which, when you summon it, you might have already filled out all the requirements to get it from 1 to 5. Okay, so next, Chapter 3, you just gain 5 health, something that kind of keeps Crusader decks alive in case they're getting wailed on by another aggressive deck. Might kind of help them in a really desperate standpoint. And then Chapter 4, 2 random friendly creatures gain Breakthrough, doesn't have to be in the same lane, doesn't have to be in different lanes, it's just 2 random creatures which don't already have it. And Chapter 5, summon Domahouse the Bloody Horned, who is a 6-cost 4/4 Minotaur with expertise. Summon a random Atronak, but damage this creature by 1. The reason why I've done this is because I don't want it to get out of control with Swarm, so he's eventually going to start taking away his own health, and if your opponent attacks him, that's also going to kill him, and it's just going to summon out one of the 3 key Atronachs, and you don't get any choice over it. So it's kind of a weird one. It's one of those ones where you think you'd run this if you're going to be playing aggressively, and you'd have House as your last kind of leg just to push you that final distance, as all of these will be able to one-shot your opponent from 5 health, which is where they'll be when all their runes are destroyed, unless they've been getting their health back up afterwards. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. It's probably my least favourite of the ones I designed, but I feel like I wanted something for Crusader just because they've got a nice bit of draw power, a nice bit of aggression, and it's one that most people kind of start off playing with as it is the original deck. Okay, and finally we have Wolf Hunter, a 6-cost warrior card which is made for werewolf decks, just to kind of really push them forward because you don't see that many of them, mainly because there's not that many in the game, but I don't know, work with what you got. This one's a bit simpler of the requirement compared to the Crusader one, and it's whenever you do direct damage to your opponent, it will move forward a chapter. Okay, so the first chapter, you receive a feral werewolf. You get to choose which lane it goes into, and it's just a simple 2-cost free unit with breakthrough to kind of help you make your way through the chapters. Next, after chapter 2, you get 3 copies of Circle Initiate just shoved in your deck. This is because they've got Prophecy, and they've got Beast Form as well, so it does go with these cards. And it all makes sense in my mind, but it's just things which you'd think, oh, I'm getting aggressively attacked, one of my runes is broken. Thankfully, one of your Circle Initiates gets flung out into the field, and when you attack your opponent next turn, you might then feel more inclined to break a rune and kind of get more Beast Form abilities off. And that moves on to Chapter 3, which is very simply just, you damage your opponent, and all your Beast Form abilities will just activate like that. You don't need to like break a rune, anything like that, and this is probably something which you might want to have in any Beast Form deck anyway, so if more cards were added to the game, you definitely want things which wouldn't require a rune to be broken, because that means there's only 5 times in the game where you'll be able to activate these, and by the 5th one you've probably already won, or it's so close that that final push might be something which you'd need a bit more for. Okay, so Chapter 4, you get given a copy of Companion Harbinger in your hand, but instead of his Beast Form ability being give all friendly werewolves +1/+1, it's when he's summoned, he will turn into a werewolf and then give all his friendly werewolves +1/+1. And then finally, after all this is done, it will play the Underforge in its place. Just because this card's already in the game, but no one ever plays it, because they've got to get through Skyforge and then they get Underforge. And as with these aggressive decks, by the time you've drawn Underforge, you've played it 3 times to get into this form of it, you've just probably either won the game or you've slowed down enough where all your tempo is gone. But that's going to end this video. I hope you guys are all keeping well, keeping safe. It kind of sucks that we're all being kind of quarantined at the moment, but if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.